Good evening and welcome to this month's opportunity to help cut crime. As always, please call in if you see any clues you recognise. We're live, of course, and everything you see is based as closely as possible on real events, real witnesses. The detectives gathered here from all around the country are waiting for your call.
And among the crimes those officers are investigating this month, the murder of the manager of a gun shop in Dundee. They need to hear from anyone who saw any comings and goings at the shop on the day it happened. A series of attacks on women in and around the Littlehampton area in Sussex. And an armed robbery on Merseyside when raiders grabbed a sealed cash box, unaware of an automatic security device which suddenly released trails of pungent red smoke as they escaped through the streets of Liverpool.
We start tonight in Dundee, though the men police need to interview could come from anywhere in Britain. 2 months ago, on Monday the 8th of May, a shopkeeper was attacked in his own shop in Union Street in the city centre. Gordon Johnston died from his injuries. He was married with 2 children, aged 12 and 9. Many of the witnesses to the events that day have taken part in our reconstruction. Dundee, with its famous bridge across the Tay, attracts shoppers from around the east of Scotland. At the heart of the shopping centre is Union Street, and one of the oldest shops there is Gow's for guns and fishing tackle.
How's the family?
Very well, actually. It's Alistair I'm in about. I'm looking for a gun for him. He's joining the gun club.
Gordon Johnston had been working here since he left school at the age of 16 in 1955. He began as an assistant and had now become manager and sole employee.
That's perfect. How much is that?
$29.95.
Can I bring him in and let him have a look at it?
Ah, yes, I'll put it aside for you.
That'd be fine.
OK, Mr. Lawson. Bye now.
Thanks, bye-bye.
It's Monday, May the 8th. Gordon took the 9A route each day to travel into town, and on that morning, regular passengers remember him as usual. He was seen getting off the bus opposite Burton's at about 8:45 that morning, and he then walked along the Nethergate to the shop. Shortly before 9, he was seen removing the grills that protect the windows, but he left the grills on the door. Then, before opening the shop to customers, Gordon went on a couple of errands.
Morning.
At the gas board showroom, the till receipt shows he dropped in to pay his bill at 3 minutes after 9.
That's £3.07.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson then went shopping. Gordon Taylor, a bank employee, met him back near Gow's. He glanced up at the church clock and remembers it was 9:14. About then, another witness was heading up Union Street.
Well, I went to the baker's and did some messages, and I walked up past the shop. And as I was passing the man bending down, I heard a remark.
I slept in this morning.
And there was 2 men at the window who he may be speaking to.
A salesman phoned Gow's sometime between 9:15 and 9:20, and someone answered.
Ah, good morning. It's Mr. Travers of Whatmore Clothing. Look, we have a new range of outdoor jackets, and I think you'd be...
Mr. Travers doesn't know who he spoke to, but assumed it was Mr. Johnson. He thinks whoever answered was used to dealing with reps and described him as sounding middle-aged.
Yeah, fine. Well, actually, I'll be up in Dundee later today, so is it all right if I drop by? Ah, that's great. That's fine. Well, look, I'll see you later.
John Richmond is the postman for the district. He was surprised to find Gow's shut and was unable to deliver the mail. We know that was at 9:24, since a few doors up he crossed the road to Henderson's Jewellers and was recorded on their security camera, which shows a clock. By this time, the town was filling up, and police need to hear from anyone who visited the area of the Nethergate and Union Street. The first shopper known to visit Gow's that morning was John Bishop.
Came down Union Street to go into Gow's to buy some fishing tackle. So I tried the front door, it was locked. Looked at my watch, it was 9:38. A man's head appeared from behind the shop door. And as I turned to walk down the street, his head appeared again. He didn't seem concerned that he'd seen me at all.
A few minutes later, Marion Davidson went to the shop. As she tried the door, she heard a voice. She didn't have time to wait and went to work. Kenneth Hastie was walking up Union Street, and so was Linda Galozzi. When Linda drew level with Gowes, she saw a man acting suspiciously, and she stopped to watch. He seemed to be having trouble locking the door.
That was suspicious.
Yeah. Some people are ignorant.
Mr. Hastie remembers that the man disappeared behind a red van parked outside Scott's bar.
So what?
Inside the bar, the owner was talking to a member of her staff.
Are you open?
No.
At the other end of Union Street, on the Nethergate, Mickey Liddell was driving into town when a man ran right out in front of him. By 4:30, a customer had become so concerned, he'd summoned the police. They discovered Gordon Johnston's body. His watch had been smashed and had stopped at 21 minutes past the hour. In fact, the hour hand was broken in the attack, but presumably it was 21 minutes past 9, which means that it's very important to identify those two men who were seen looking into the shop window a little bit earlier.
Indeed, yes. One is described as in his late 30s and 5 feet 9 inches in height. The other is smaller and described in his 20s. He's of stouter build than the first one.
Now, one of the witnesses, as we saw in the reconstruction, actually saw a face inside the shop.
Yes, unfortunately it's only half a face because, as you would see in the film, the window was obscured and we could only see the witness could only see the top part of the man's face. He describes him as being 40 to 50 years, 5 foot 9 inches in height, slim build and pointed, craggy features.
Even so, it's quite a detailed Crimewatch video fit, that.
It is, yes.
Now, we've got an even more detailed one, or at least we've got a more complete video fit, because this is the man seen running away from the shop.
That's right.
Or at least walking away briskly.
This man carrying a gun case is described as 25 years, again 5 foot 9 inches in height, of average build and sharp features. He had dark collar-length hair and he was wearing light denim jeans, and witnesses have described his clothing as either a light anorak, which was dark blue in colour, or a jerkin, and it had a hood, but this hood may have been attached to an undergarment. OK, it's quite similar to the video fit that we saw, the half video fit earlier. Now, it also is quite similar to a man who was picked up by that security camera in the jeweller's shop shortly after 9 o'clock, isn't it? That is correct, yes. What time was this taken, this? This was shortly after 9 at the same jeweller's shop, and it may have been that this man was innocently going to a railway station, a bus station or whatever, but we haven't traced him and it's imperative that we do. Here it is again. We'll freeze on that point. Now, if that was you, and if you were innocently going about your business that morning, a little bit after 9 o'clock, please do call us right away now. There was a clasp knife found as well. This outside Scott's bar, which is on the route that the man was seen walking away fairly briskly. You suspect this might have been stolen from Gowes? Yes, Mr. Johnson did sell such knives, but unfortunately we cannot say how many have been stolen, or indeed this is the only one. So if anybody was offered an Opinel French clasp knife in suspicious circumstances, particularly in the Tayside area, you need to hear from them. That is correct, yes. Now, he was a popular man in the vicinity, and I know local people have been very upset, let alone the family. Very much, yes. They've got together a reward? Yes, the proprietors of the shop and their associates in the area have put forward a reward of £12,000 for information which will lead to the arrest and the conviction of the person or persons who have committed this crime.
OK, well, we know that Mrs Johnston and the children are watching tonight. If you think in any way you can help, here's the number to ring. In the studio, it's 01811 8055. Or you can ring Tayside Police at Dundee direct on 0382 23200. That's 0382, the code for Dundee, 23200.
Well, looking back now at the results from our last programme, no significant news to report as yet on the murder of Jean Kempton from Brixton, and nothing we can say at the moment either on the hijack of the lorry load of cigarettes and video equipment. But more than 100 people called with information after seeing our reconstruction of the kidnapping at Kelvedon in Essex. Armed men burst into the home of an assistant bank manager, and having held the family overnight, they robbed the bank next morning. No arrests yet, but the detectives are very pleased with some interesting new lines of inquiry. And you may have heard about a very similar bank raid 3 weeks ago on the 15th of June. Now, there may or may not be a link between the two cases. Police don't yet know. But this was at a branch of Barclays in Bloxham near Banbury in Oxfordshire. 3 or 4 men escaped with cash and jewellery worth over £100,000. And police need to trace the movements of 2 cars used in the robbery. The first one is a 3-door white Ford Sierra Cosworth type vehicle, possibly a D registration. That hasn't yet been found. That you saw was a black Golf, metallic black Golf, GTI V16. There's the Cosworth there. The registration number of the Golf is F991OPJ, and that was stolen from Richmond in Surrey on the 26th of May. The mileometer shows it was driven over 1,000 miles after that, but the big question is where? The Golf was discovered last week at Leamington Spa railway station. Inside was this wooden gun case, which was manufactured around the 1930s and made for a double-barrelled 12-bore shotgun. It may have been stolen in a burglary, so perhaps it was yours. And the raiders also left behind this Tamrac photographic bag. Tamrac is an American make, and only about 80 of them have ever been sold in this country. So if you know somebody who once owned one of these, or perhaps you owned one yourself, please do call us. There's a £50,000 reward, incidentally.
If you saw our last programme, you're bound to remember the Building Society raider in West London who dropped his travel card, complete with photograph, as he ran out. As a result of 7 calls here to the studio and 1 to Scotland Yard, a man was arrested at Heathrow Airport as he was about to board a plane. He's been charged with 9 offences, including 2 robberies, 2 attempted robberies and 4 counts of using an imitation firearm.
And now to Photocall, security film of people caught on camera whom police would like to catch in person. Here's Superintendent David Hatcher.
In our first case, colleagues from London's flying squad want to trace this robber. He's seen here on the 27th of May at a building society in Teddington, Middlesex. He threatened the manager and forced him to put cash into a white plastic bag that he'd brought in with him. Earlier in March, he robbed a building society in Richmond, Surrey, getting away with over £5,000. He returned to the same building society in April and on this occasion pointed a handgun at the staff. The robber is described as 25 years old, 5 foot 8 inches tall, with short, dark, curly hair. He wore glasses and spoke with a local accent. Call us if you recognise him. Next, police in Essex would like to find this woman. She's seen here in a building society in Colchester on the 10th of April, where she threatened the cashiers with a handgun and demanded that they fill a Millets carrier bag with cash. She got away with nearly £1,500. She's around 5 foot 8 inches tall and is between 30 and 35 years of age. She was wearing a green Parker-style jacket, sunglasses and a red woolen hat with her hair tucked into it. Now, although the cashiers are convinced that this robber is a woman, we wonder whether the robber is in fact a man. If you know this person, then please phone us now. Next, flying squad officers want to trace these 2 robbers caught in action raiding a betting shop in Ravensden Street in south-east London. The shop had just opened on the 10th of February when the men came in and threatened the staff with a handgun. We think the same 2 men are responsible for 9 other similar raids at betting shops in the Elephant and Castle area of London. Both men are in their 30s, between 5 foot 6 and 5 foot 10 inches tall, and of average build. One has short, light brown hair that's receding, and he wore metal-rimmed glasses. The other had black hair, collar length, and was clean-shaven. Call us now if you know who they are. Finally, colleagues from West Mercia are looking for a man who went into a Staffordshire building society in Redditch on the 3rd of May. He produced a note demanding money and was brandishing what the cashier believed to be a double-barrelled shotgun. He escaped with money stuffed in a plastic bag. He's quite short and fat, and we think the glasses he was wearing are his own and not a disguise. He's got a distinctive lower jaw which juts out beyond the upper. He was also described as very unfit. As he ran a short distance from the building society, he stopped to catch his breath before walking on. If you recognise him, or any of our other photo call faces, please ring us now.
And here's the number if there's anyone there you think you know. 01811 8055. 01811 8055.
Within minutes of our last programme's photo call, a viewer was on the line with a name that led to an arrest the next day. There'd been a series of raids on photographic shops in Liverpool and the Greater Manchester areas in which staff had been threatened with a knife, an iron bar and a baseball bat. As a result of that call here, a man has now been charged with robbery.
And again on May's photo call, we showed a picture of a man wanted in connection with a robbery and assault in Cleveland last year. And as a result of that, a man has now been convicted and sentenced at Teesside Crown Court to 18 months imprisonment.
Back in March, we featured a series of frauds in East Anglia. Detectives in Norfolk would now like to speak to this man. He's Harold Geoffrey Monaghan, and he may be able to help them with some information. He's tall, he's about 6'2", he's well built, he's married, he has 2 daughters aged 15 and 13 and a son aged about 5. He has described himself as a self-employed fashion designer or an oil company executive. If you know where he is, please ring us now.
Now, while it's true to say that attacks on women appear to be on the increase, it's also true to say that this rise is due very largely to the fact that more women are now coming forward to report this kind of crime. In the majority of cases, these attacks are carried out by people who know their victims or who are related to them. Having said that, there is occasionally somebody who doesn't fit that pattern and is a cause for concern to a whole community. Helen Phelps now reports on one such case.
The Sussex coast has many small holiday resorts. They are not as busy as the larger towns such as Brighton or Hastings, and as a result have a lower crime rate. But since the end of February, there have been a series of sex attacks here in Littlehampton, and the police believe they've been committed by just one man. Leading the hunt for the attacker is Detective Inspector John Ryder, who initially thought that the first attack on a 21-year-old woman was an isolated incident.
The attack happened on a busy road known as Clun Road. This leads to a large council estate in Littlehampton known as the Wick Estate. The attack happened at around midnight on Tuesday the 28th of February.
What's the time?
I don't know.
He committed a violent sexual assault on her. And I do appeal to anybody who was in the area at the time, especially in the Clun Road, who may have seen a man lurking about to come forward and let us know. At one stage during the attack, he placed his hand over her eyes to conceal his identity, obviously.
This is the village of Rustington, on the outskirts of Littlehampton, and just a couple of miles from the scene of the first attack.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
It's Saturday the 25th of March, just before 10 o'clock, and a young girl is dropped off by her boyfriend to catch the Worthing bus.
What time's the next bus?
I think it's about 10:10.
Oh. Cheers. Come with me, we'll have some fun.
By the time she reached Church Road, the man had disappeared.
There's no doubt in my mind this was a premeditated attack on this young lady. On this occasion, he was armed with a knife, with a blade of some 6 to 7 inches long going into a point, which she describes as probably a kitchen knife. The attacker made no effort to disguise himself.
What about that?
No, the eyes are wrong.
They're wrong.
Fortunately enough, with our assistance, she was able to compile a photo-fit picture. She says that he was about 6 foot tall. He was in his mid-20s, thin build. He had black, greasy hair, which was shoulder length and brushed back at the sides, and he had a moustache. He was wearing a black bomber-type jacket with a zip down the front, and it had a metal tag, and she believes that he was wearing dark trousers. Only 8 days later, another attack happened in Littlehampton.
What are you doing?
The victim of the attack that took place here at the bus shelter compiled this photo fit of her attacker. The girl in the car made this one. The similarity is remarkable.
As a result of local publicity, a journalist came forward and we ascertained that just 20 minutes before the incident, she drove past the scene.
I was driving through Rustington when I saw this man standing out in the road. He was walking towards me but had his thumb up as though he was hitching in the opposite direction, which I thought was a bit strange. He really stared at me as I drove past, which rather unnerved me.
The last 2 attacks had been in Rustington. Inspector Ryder decided to set up a surveillance operation there in the hope of catching the attacker.
Right, there's going to be 2 observation points and 2 standby units. DC Shakespeare, observation point 1.
Yes.
Right, WPC Pi, you will be the decoy. You'll be in the bus yard.
At all times, she would be in sight and radio contact with fellow detectives.
We'll have eye contact with you. Charlie 39, you receiving over?
Yes, yes.
Are you in situ over?
Yes, yes.
What's the eyeball view of the decoy over?
Clear, unobstructed, no problems, over.
Yeah, much obliged. Operation commencing.
3930. Male, white, 6 foot approaching. Might be worth a look, over.
Yeah, received 39. Keep close eyeball contact. Don't lose sight of the decoy, over.
On this occasion, it was an innocent passer-by. But on Wednesday, the 3rd of May, the attacker struck again. It was 1 o'clock in the morning in Peregrine Road in Littlehampton. Fortunately, like the other women he'd attacked, she too managed to get away. If over the last few months you've been approached by a man in a similar way, then we need to hear from you now. And finally, take a look at our video fits. Do you know this man?
Well, if you think you do recognise that man, or if you live around that area and somebody has tried to attack you, your call tonight could be vital. The number here in the studio is 01 811 8055. You can ask to speak to a female officer or a BBC researcher if you like, or you can ring Sussex Police Direct on 0903 716161. That's 0903, the code for Littlehampton, 716161. Your calls will be treated with the utmost discretion.
We may already be making progress with some of the cases we've already featured tonight. On the Dundee murder, detectives are now interested in one caller who seems to know who the 2 men might have been who were outside the gun shop looking in. On the Richmond robber, 1 name has been given, that's interesting police officers. Another has called and given a lead to who that person might be. They took part in the raid. The Kennington bookie raid, an identification again with an address, which interests the officers in charge of the case. Now, back in February, we showed some rare and expensive model trains, replicas of locomotives that have been stolen from a house in Colwyn Bay last November. As a result of calls to the programme, and it must be said a good deal of persistence on the part of the investigating officer, all 5 engines have now been recovered.
And a lot of property has been reclaimed as a result of May's Aladdin's Cave. This tea caddy in the shape of a melon and a Bible box, it seemed they'd been stolen from an antique shop in West Yorkshire in 1987. And this ivory serviette ring with the signature of Thomas E. Wilson was claimed by a woman who says it belonged to her father, a trader in Nigeria in the 1930s. An African tribesman actually carved Mr. Wilson's signature on it. Police think that that and some ivory figurines were stolen from a house in Bolton, and they're now confident that once checks have been made, many of the other items will now find their rightful homes.
Well, now to this month's incident desk, some short appeals on crimes around the country. In Nottingham, a fraud in which dozens of investors were tricked out of their redundancy and retirement money. In Durham, a missing camera which could be a crucial clue in the hunt for whoever murdered Sandy Douglas. And in Leicester and throughout the Midlands, a search for the man who's raided a series of building societies. Each time, he's worn a curly wig. With the details, here's Superintendent David Hatcher.
First, that murder in County Durham. On Tuesday, May the 30th, the body of 45-year-old Sandy Douglas was discovered at her home in the village of Aycliffe near Darlington. She'd been stabbed. Sandy, who was also known as Daphne Torrock, was a wealthy divorcee. Since February, she'd rented a flat in Floral Street, Covent Garden, as a London base. Well, on Friday the 27th of May, that's the start of the bank holiday weekend, Sandy and a friend called Marcos travelled from London to Aycliffe and spent the weekend there. She told friends that Marcos was Spanish and worked as a waiter at a hotel near Covent Garden. The investigating officers would like to speak to Marcos, who may have information about her movements. He's described as about 20, 5 foot 9 inches tall, with dark curly hair and of Mediterranean appearance. Do you recognise him? We think that just after 2 p.m. on the 29th of May, the bank holiday Monday, a taxi collected Marcos from the victim's home and took him to Darlington railway station. The officers believe that he caught a London-bound train. Now, he could have boarded the 9:55 a.m. Aberdeen to King's Cross. That stopped at Darlington at 2:33 p.m, continued on to York to arrive at King's Cross at 5:08 p.m. Or he may have caught the train which left Edinburgh at 1 p.m, arriving at Darlington at 3:04. That stopped at York, Doncaster, Peterborough and arrived at King's Cross at 5:45. Did you travel on either of those trains? And one more thing, a camera belonging to the victim has not been found. It's an Olympus AF10, serial number 18234228. Sandy's family is offering a reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction. If you can help, then call us now. Next, we'd like to find an armed robber who's raided 6 building societies in the Midlands and South West. Luckily for us, on 5 of those raids, he's been caught on security cameras, so we've got quite a bit of footage of him. The first incident took place at a building society in Gloucester on March the 30th. He threatened the cashiers with a small black handgun before making his getaway. We believe that that moustache is a fake. On the 18th of April, he turned up at a building society in Birmingham. Again, he threatened the cashiers with a handgun and demanded that they fill a carrier bag with cash. Once full, he calmly walked back into the street. In Northampton, 9 days later, on the 27th of April, he struck again. Just before 4:30 p.m, he went into a building society and held the cashiers at gunpoint. He seems to have been a little ruffled on this occasion and bundled the cash into his pockets. But then, only 7 days later in Leicester, he appeared as calm as ever. Again, he produced a small handgun and made the staff fill a white bin liner type bag with cash. We think that on this occasion, he made his getaway in a blue and black van. The last raid caught by the security cameras took place in Newport on the 17th of May. He strolled in at 10 minutes past 4 and ordered the cashiers to fill a dark green plastic bag with cash. And we think he struck again on the 7th of June at a building society in Swindon. We know that the robber is 6 foot 2 inches tall, of slim build and somewhere between 25 and 30 years of age. Now, at first glance, his hair looks real, but it's actually a wig. We think that underneath his real hair is fair, possibly even ginger. There's a reward for information leading to his arrest and conviction, so if you recognise him, please get in touch. Next, though, a murder in Surbiton in Surrey. A £25,000 reward has been offered by the family of retired solicitor James Durrant for information leading to the arrest and conviction of whoever murdered him in his home last October. James Durrant was last seen at 8:45 p.m. on Wednesday the 26th of October 1988 when he paid the bill for a meal at the Sugarloaf public house in London's Covent Garden. We think he travelled by tube to Waterloo Station and then by rail to Surbiton, where a ticket collector thinks he saw him at 9:45 that evening. He probably walked along Claremont Road into Surbiton Hill Road and then Cranes Park Avenue. James Durrant was found battered to death in his home. Although his wallet was missing, there was no sign of a break-in or a burglary, and we remain unsure as to the motive for his murder. So, if you can help in any way, please ring us now. Next, Nottinghamshire Police would like to speak to Peter William Wakeling, who might have information about a possible investment fraud totalling nearly £500,000. Between 1982 and 1986, 3 companies, UK and Offshore Investments, Newstead Investments and Murray Atoll Investments may have been used to defraud people from Nottingham and Derby of their redundancy and retirement money. These companies have now ceased trading. During this time, we know Peter Wakeling bought several racehorses and used to visit race meetings around the country. Before his disappearance in May 1988, his last known address was in Clarborough, Nottingham, but he was seen as late as July 1988 at a hotel in West Bridgford, Nottingham, under the name of Peter Chamberlain. He's 34 years old, 6 foot 3 inches tall, of heavy build, and he may have shaved off that beard by now. Please ring us if you know where he is. Walt Disney's Jungle Book is one of the best-loved cartoon films ever made. It shows Mowgli's perilous journey through the jungle and how he is guided back to the man village by Baloo the bear. The 1967 film was just one illustration of Rudyard Kipling's stories. These are another. They're a complete set of prints made from engravings for the 1908 publication of the story. The artists were Morris and Edward Detmold, two brothers who lived in Hampstead, London, and were well known for their animal illustrations. The 16 prints are nearly 90 years old, but are in excellent condition. Each illustration protected and stored in this folder. They were recovered in May in the West End of London by the Regional Crime Squad. Now, the officers believe that they may have been stolen and urgently need to trace their owner. Do you know who they belong to? If you've any information, then call us now.
Here's the number if you can help in any way, 01 811 8055.
And we're getting some more calls in. For example, a great number of callers about the man who's robbed 3 building societies in Richmond and Teddington. 2 separate callers have identified the man with the same name. And the Sussex attacks, one caller phones to say that he recognises the video fits, believes he's a person with previous convictions for assaults in the Chichester area, and he's given a name. And 2 other callers have rung with names too, so all those things are being followed up at the moment. Now, over the past few years, security companies have been using increasingly sophisticated measures to protect their staff and the cash and valuables they carry. Our last case tonight shows how one particular device foiled a gang of armed robbers at the headquarters of a regional electricity board in May. Our reconstruction begins on Wednesday the 26th of April at the West Kirby Sailing Club on the Wirral in Merseyside. The owner of the Sierra, Peter Skinner, is a regular member of the club. Wednesday night is a race night at the club, and more than 60 people took part in the various races that evening. At 8:30, when he had finished sailing, Peter went back to the club bar to meet some friends.
Really tired. Yeah, I'll have to go. We'll see you tomorrow.
It was about 10:30 when Mr. Skinner decided to leave. But sometime during the 2 hours he'd spent in the club, the 2-litre Ford Sierra had been stolen. It was 15 days before the car was seen next, but in that time someone had done some work on it. False number plates had been fitted, and for some reason the front passenger seat had been taken out. It's 9:10 in the morning on May the 11th at Manweb, the Merseyside and North Wales Electricity Board, in Lister Drive in Liverpool. A Securicor van arrived to make a delivery.
Hello, Manweb, can I help you? Are you querying the amount of the bill or the method of payment?
The guard made his routine check through the window to make sure everything was in order inside the office before collecting the cash box.
Morning.
Oh, Christ!
Two Manweb employees leaving the depot were just in time to see the robbers escaping.
There's been a robbery.
What?
Oh,
no.
Don't stop. Get after them. Got a whisk, piece of paper and a pen. Might be able to get the licence number.
Emergency, emergency. There's been a robbery at the depot. We're in pursuit of a blue Ford Sierra, registration number B992...
DVC?
That's B992 DVC up Moscow Drive.
Right, thanks, Stammer.
Hello, police emergency, can I help you?
The sealed cash box the robbers had seized contained £6,000 in cash. It also contained an automatic security device on a time delay, which, unknown to the men, was soon to detonate.
Our mobiles are following a blue Sierra.
Obviously blinded by clouds of acrid red smoke, the driver collided with a Volkswagen estate car at the junction of Lister Drive and Green Lane. The Sierra continued along Moscow Drive, trailing red smoke. The smoke contains an indelible red dye, so the men and the money would have been covered in it.
Did you see them? Where did they go?
Somewhere along the route, 2 of the men must have been dropped off. The other 2 were seen leaving the car in an alleyway off Marfield Road.
Well, we have Detective Inspector in charge of the case here, Sue.
Right, Alan Buckley is in charge of this case. What exactly is the effect of that red smoke, Mr. Buckley?
Well, the dye from the canister will make the money not usable at all. It taints it red and it can't be passed at all.
What about the men themselves?
The men will be covered in red dye, both their skin and the clothing that they wear, and it will take some considerable time for this dye to be washed off the skin and off the clothing.
Right, so it's, what, 8 weeks now since the actual crime, but there's still likely to be some traces of dye on them?
It could well be, yes.
And earlier on, presumably, they would have had very distinctive sort of red marks around their eyes and on their hands.
Very much so. They would look a funny sight as they took the masks off, yes.
Right. Now, do all security companies use this kind of device now?
The major companies have started using this type of canister that explodes on a time device, yes, and it's obviously very useful and preventative.
Right. You've actually brought a money box
yes.
in of the same type that was stolen?
This is the type that was stolen on this particular incident. It hasn't yet been recovered. So if any member of the public has found this discarded anywhere, it will be covered in red dye. The money inside will be covered in red dye, if in fact it's still there, or if they found the money separate from the box.
Right, so don't be frightened to come forward if you have found that. The police will be delighted because it'll be a vital clue. Now, what are you hoping that the people might have seen on the actual day of the crime, which, to remind people, was Thursday, May the 11th?
That's right, the 11th of May. We're aware that 2 robbers abandoned the vehicle in Marfield Road, which is some 3 miles away from where the incident took place. So during that journey, 2 other robbers have got from the vehicle, and we'd like to know if anybody saw the vehicle, and secondly, if they saw these 2 men getting from it, who would have the shotgun with them and the boiler suits.
Right. And what about the Ford Sierra itself? Because it was stolen, of course, 2 weeks before the robbery, so you'll need to know where it was in that intervening time.
That's right, very much so. We're not aware that it was driven about during that time. We presume it was garaged somewhere, and during that time, the number plate was changed. So it was bearing a false number plate, so if anybody knows where that false number plate came from, in fact, if they made it up, they could contact us.
So that was the original number there, D142SCM, and the false plates were B992DVC, and they were changed somewhere between the 26th of April and May the 11th. Why do you think they took the front passenger seat out, incidentally?
We don't really know. It's the second incident that I've investigated where they've removed the front passenger seat in a 4-door vehicle. We're presuming it gives them certainly more room inside to put a cash box and shotgun. It gives a different appearance that there could only be 3 people in there instead of 4.
Do you believe these men are dangerous?
They are very dangerous. On this particular occasion, they discharged the firearm. There was no need to. The security man had given up the box quite easily as he's instructed to, and all of the members of the public were behind screens and walls. And in fact, we did find an undischarged cartridge in the recovered vehicle, so they were determined to fire again.
Right, well, Mr. Buckley, if you can offer any information on those men, remember they were armed. Ring us here in the studio tonight on 01811 8055, or ring Merseyside Police Headquarters direct on 051 708 8772. That's 051 for Liverpool, 708 8772.
Now back to Superintendent David Hatcher with another file of faces police would like to interview in connection with their inquiries. David.
First, do you recognise these robbers? At 11:35 a.m. on Saturday the 15th of April, they went into Farrington's Jewellers in Brookman's Park near Hatfield, Hertfordshire. They threatened a member of staff and pushed her to the back of the shop. One man took keys which opened the cabinets and stole an assortment of jewellery worth £36,000. The jewellery, which included gold, sapphire and diamond rings, is engraved with this distinguishing designer's mark, a triangle with the letters CJW inside it. The two raiders got into a stolen red Ford Cortina Mark V driven by a third accomplice. He's in his 40s with a fat face and brown hair. Both robbers are described as white, 18 to 20 years old, 5 foot 10 inches tall. The one on the right had light brown hair and spoke with a London accent. The other one on the left was medium to stocky build with dark, wavy, unkempt hair. If you have any information, call us now. Our next case involves stolen American Express travellers' cheques. This man was caught on the security video of a bank in East Grinstead attempting to cash $400 worth of stolen cheques. And we believe he's connected with similar incidents dating back to December of last year, including the handling of counterfeit Visa travellers' cheques. The man is described as between 5'6" and 5'9" inches tall, of stocky build and in his 20s. He has dark collar-length hair which is greased back. And he has a Mediterranean complexion, but that could be makeup. His accent is described as foreign, but again, that could be false. If you recognise him, then please phone us now. Colleagues in Greater Manchester want to speak to this man, Joseph Paul Schofield. He may have information about a series of deceptions involving stolen chequebooks and guarantee cards. Since 1984, major stores throughout the north of England have been conned out of goods totalling nearly £40,000. It's strongly believed that Schofield is living in the Manchester area. He's 34, 5 foot 10 inches tall, heavy build, with tattoos on his left arm. He may not have that beard now. If that's a familiar face to you, please let us know. Lastly, on Friday the 10th of February, 3 armed men burst into a bank in Bideford Avenue in Greenford. They threatened staff and customers with sawn-off shotguns before escaping with over £16,000. The men all wore balaclavas, except one. Perhaps you recognise him. We think the same gang struck again 6 weeks later at a bank in Upper Brentwood Road in Romford. Shots were fired, but staff refused to hand over any money. In an attempt to get the money themselves, the men tried to smash through a security window. As they left, one of them began to take off his mask. Look at him closely. If you recognise him, or any of our other photo call faces, please get in touch.
Here's the number in the studio, 01811 8055, 01811 8055.
And I can tell you it looks like we'll be back with some real news on Crimewatch Update at 11:15 immediately after Wimbledon. The lines are open until midnight. You'll find the relevant local police numbers on CFAX on page 186, or you can write to us at Crimewatch UK, BBC Television, London W12 7RJ.
We'll be back in September after a summer break. In the meantime, if you can help solve any of the crimes we've shown tonight, please do call. And if you can't help this time, well, bear in mind, we've crowded more serious crime into the last 45 minutes than many police officers will encounter in a lifetime. Serious crime is rarer than people tend to think, so please don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night. Hello and welcome back. And calls on all 20 of our cases have kept us very busy here in the studio and at local police headquarters all around the country. We've had some particularly important calls on the attacker in Sussex. More of that later. But first of all, Nick.
And let's go straight away with news on our photo call faces. Superintendent David Hatcher. Let's start straight away with the Richmond robber, because I know you've had a lot of calls on that one.
Yes, in fact, over 20 calls there, Nick, and they've given us a number of names, and several different sources have given us names, in fact, given us the same name. So that looks extremely promising.
Now, there was a robber in Redditch who was extremely distinctive. He was fat, he was out of breath and unfit, he had a protruding lower jaw.
Yes, poor soul had nothing going for him, did he? Well, we've had 7 calls, including one from an officer who's suggesting that man may already be in custody, and the other calls have given us possible names. So again, we're hopeful.
Anything on the jewellery raid in Hatfield, the Hertfordshire one?
Yes, 10 calls, including names of people who are thought to be involved in this kind of crime, who live in the Hertfordshire and London area, the right area, and it ties in with what officers on the case know, so again, we're hopeful.
And someone who's trying to pass off stolen travellers' cheques?
Yes, well, that one has produced a few more potential victims. An Eastbourne department store say that somebody tried to use a stolen American Express card there on Monday of this week, and that someone was identical to the man on our picture. A bank employee in Epping says this man, the same man, tried to cash stolen Visa cheques there and ran out on the 29th of last month. And another 2 banks have now called us and said that this man has tried to cash American Express cheques with them too. So we're building up quite a long picture of where and what he's up to. What we want to know is where is he now, of course.
Anything on Joseph Schofield?
Yes, quite a lot, and I'm not going to tell you any more than that because we want to keep that one a bit quiet for the time being.
I see. All right. The gang who robbed a building society in Greenford, probably the same people who tried it on a bank in Romford.
Yes, well, one of those raiders there obligingly took his mask off as he was leaving. We've got a possible name for him, and we've got an appeal too. A caller has phoned the police direct, phoned the police station direct, and we'd like that caller, please, to get in touch with us again. What you've said already looks very promising, and we must talk to you some more. Please get in touch.
Thank you. Sue.
Well, now the armed robbers on Merseyside who attacked as a security van delivered a cash box to the headquarters of Manweb on Lister Road in Liverpool. And as the raiders escaped, they were taken by surprise as a time-delayed security device detonated, filling their getaway car with pungent red smoke and covering them and the money with indelible red dye. Detective Inspector Alan Buckley has been taking the calls, and what sort of calls have you had?
We've had a good response to a large number of calls, certainly to the studio and to our headquarters. There are some people who have tried to pass tainted notes, but some without success. We've got a good lead on where the vehicle was stored and where the number plate has been changed, which points us to a particular area of Liverpool, which we're looking at in the not-too-distant future.
Have you had any names or identities for the people?
We have been given quite a few names. A particular individual did ring us and has given us names. He obviously knows about the matter. He put the phone down, and I would appeal to him if he could come forward again, phone us again. He would be treated in the strictest confidence, and we could do with speaking to him again.
Right. What about that cash box? You're hoping somebody might have found that dumped somewhere?
Yes, unfortunately, as yet, nobody's come forward to say that they have found it, but it is useless to anybody at all, and it would be a good clue for us if we could get it back.
Right. And what about the car itself? You're hoping that somebody might give you some information as to where that Ford Sierra was between the 26th of April and the 11th of May?
Yes, as I say, we've had a very important call that points us towards a garage in a particular area of Liverpool, where we will be looking at in the not-too-distant future.
Right. Well, let's hope that they do come forward. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, now to the gunshot murder in Dundee. On a Monday morning, a couple of months ago, several people in the centre of the city saw a man whose behaviour attracted their attention. Later that afternoon, Gow's, the gun shop which that man had seemed to have come out of, was checked by police, and they found that the shopkeeper, Gordon Johnston, had been murdered. How many calls have you had, Mr. Mackay? Are you pleased with the result?
Yes, we've had quite a number of calls here in the studio, and about 26 to 30 calls in Dundee itself.
That's despite intensive local publicity to this case already.
Indeed, yes. The publicity has been kept going for some time, and we've had a lot of calls, but tonight we've had almost 30 calls.
What have you discovered that you didn't know before?
Nothing significant other than the fact that names have been given and more information in regard to possible suspects, etc.
Have you actually got names of suspects? And
Persons
names?
have phoned in with names, whether anonymously or otherwise, and we're following this up now.
Have you been able to eliminate any of the people that we saw in the film, because there were a number of men who were seen sighted near the place, or have you got names for them?
No, not as yet.
OK, well, obviously if you can help, our lines are still open. Do give us a call. Sue.
Well, next, the man in Littlehampton, who's made several attempts to attack women in the area since February. Two of the victims gave strikingly similar descriptions of the attackers, as we can see by putting the two video fits side by side like that. Mr. John Ryder, I gather you've had some very important calls, actually, on this.
We have indeed. We've had tremendous incident calls both here and at Littlehampton, over 100 now. And there's a lot of genuine people in Littlehampton area who feel that they know the described man by the photo fit in Bognor, Littlehampton and the Worthing area. We are, in fact, following now.
Yes, those two video fits are so similar. Has anybody actually come up with a name?
We've had several names that have come forward, and once again, we will be following those up.
You can't really underestimate the importance, can you, of women coming forward, having the courage to come forward and report attacks like this?
Indeed. And during the programme, we had one such young lady who's been a victim of an atrocious attack come forward to give information. She was willing to help us. And we believe that there are a number of young ladies who have been subjected to such attacks who probably could come forward and help us. We need that information to catch this man.
Right. Well, Mr. Ryder, thank you very much indeed.
Well, let's see now what sort of calls have been coming through on our incident desk. David, we were trying to trace somebody called Marcos, a friend of Sandy Douglas, who was murdered.
Yes, sadly, 45-year-old Sandy Douglas was murdered in Aycliffe up in Darlington. Well, we've got some hope there because Marcos has been suggested as being in various places around the country, and we said that we thought he was working as a waiter, and some of the information that we've got ties in with him possibly being a waiter. So there are a number of places to check out around the country, and in the areas that we suspected he might be. We also were seeking a camera, like this one, an AF-10, that belonged to Sandy Douglas, and the serial number we know on that one was in fact 1823428. Well, we've had about 3 calls from people who say they found cameras like this and handed them in to the police or still have them. So we can check that out, and that might be a vital clue. Okay. And lastly, some possible train sightings that we were featuring.
Because he was thought to be on a train from back down to London. There was a robber then, fairly active in the Midlands and South West, who was wearing, it thought to be, a black curly wig and probably a false black moustache as well.
Yes, we've got a couple of names that could match up with him. We think actually he's got fair hair or ginger hair, not like the black wig as you mentioned. But we'll be following those up. OK, and a man wanted in connection with the fraud inquiry, Peter William Wakeling. Yes, well, actually, we want to talk to Peter William Wakeling about the frauds. We've had a suggestion from a cab driver that he dropped him off a couple of days ago in Grantham. Somebody else says they think they saw Peter William Wakeling at Yarmouth races, where he was bidding for a horse, and we know that he was involved in horses. Possible sighting at a Norfolk caravan site. And we've had a Peter William Wakeling call us from Cambridgeshire who says he does fit the description, but it's not him. Okay. We will talk to him and check that out, of course.
Well, meanwhile, the lines here in the studio are closing down now. If you still have some information to give but haven't managed to get through yet, the relevant local police numbers for all tonight's cases will be on your screen in a moment, or you can ring your local police, or you can write to us if you like, and the address is Crimewatch UK, BBC Television, London W12 7RJ.
It'll be September before we see you next. Crimewatch UK takes a summer break. But a final reminder before we go, we say it all the time, but it's nonetheless true. Serious and violent crime is mercifully rarer than people think. And if we work together, it always will be. So please don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.
Welcome to another crime scene.